My name is Jerry Mintz. I'm the director of the Alternative Education Resource Organization, AERO. We are the main network of educational alternatives around the world. We put out a weekly e-newsletter that goes to 15,000 people around the world. We have a website, which is the #1 on Google for alternative education. And we, on the website, we have about 600 member organizations and schools, and about 100 that we have helped to start, mostly through our online course to help people start educational alternatives. So that's basically what we do. And we've been doing this since 1989. So what, 35 years. And basically our mission is to see learner-centered education become the norm. Education based on the interest of the students and not somebody's top-down idea about what they should be learning. So that's what we strive for. When we set up a lot of these alternatives, they serve as models for people to look at. When the pandemic came along, in some ways it looks like they looked to what we had created for a distance learning type approach, as well as what they called pandemic pods, which are homeschool resource centers. And they use these models as a way of when they were thrust into this situation, continuing some kind of education. And so that may have been the education revolution. And that is our website, educationrevolution.org. And maybe 2 billion people all of a sudden realized that they weren't stuck with their local schools anymore, that they had options. They didn't even know that before, many of them. This is extremely important, especially in a world that is tending toward authoritarianism. And it's interesting, I just now had to get off with another Zoom that I was involved with, trying to save Goddard College in Vermont. Goddard College is one of the oldest alternative colleges, a real pioneering school, and has been doing this for many, many decades. And they ran out of money, basically. And so a lot of people who are alumni, including myself, have been getting together to try to keep it going, because it's a very important lighthouse, one of many that people need to try to avoid the school just slipping into an authoritarian approach for everything. Why do we move in the direction of authoritarianism? Well, I think it's because of the educational system itself trying to recreate itself in its own image, meaning that people have grown up in a situation in which they were told what to do, that somebody else was going to explain to them what they should be learning, gave them a curriculum to follow. And so that's kind of what people were used to, teachers and students and parents. And so unfortunately, it tends to perpetuate itself rather than come up with something new. But that may be changing. I'm hoping it will. And in fact, it's rather crucial that it does. And we will be doing, I forget how many, our about 20th conference, 21st conference, this June, 21st to 23rd of June. And the theme will be the importance of democratic education and how that could be crucial for for keeping the world away from becoming an authoritarian approach to everything. So that is basically the essence of what we do, what we're trying to do. We are in the middle of our online course right now. We give that course we've been doing, I think, since 1994 or so. And basically people join the course who want to start new educational alternatives. And if you look on our website, educationrevolution.org, you will see under the section Find a School, you'll see the 600 or so schools that are involved with our network. It's really many more than that, but I mean 600 that have been officially members, and then 100 that we helped to start. You'll also see a list of democratic schools, schools that are specifically democratic. And what that means is that schools in which the students have a vote about how their school runs, and that they can have a huge impact because of that vote. Some people feel this was inspired by Summerhill, which continues now over 100 years old now in England, started by A.S. Neal. And technically his daughter Zoe is running it, and then her children are ready to take it over. Basically a democratic approach in which class attendance is non-compulsory. You go to what you're interested in. How does that work? Well, I ran a school like that for 17 years. The average student in my school was in the top 5%. And these were mostly low-income students. So the answer is it works really well. When students are able to follow their own interests, they learn better and they learn well and at a higher rate. So this is what we're working on. This is what we're trying to promote. I don't actually want to speak too long. I'm hoping there are people there who have some questions, because this, if I just kept on babbling on, that would be kind of a violation of our concept of a learner-centered approach, wouldn't it? So I would like to know what people would like to know or talk about or let people know about. How do we do that?
All right, Jerry, thank you. No, so actually, so whatever the information you gave, at least that gives us just kind of some idea about what is it all about and what do you guys do, kind of. So first question I will start with, so who are student wise, who are your target students, kind of? Is it like what age group are we looking for, like the school, like the middle school, high school, or are we talking the college level? Just for the understanding.
Yes.
So is all of the above?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Basically, that's what education is. And so it has to do with all of this. As I said, I just got off of a Zoom call with people who are mostly alumni of Goddard College in Vermont. So there is the higher educational alternatives. But really, I'll tell you a little story. I had just come back, and this is happening all over the world. So I had just come back from trying to help people in India who wanted to start democratic process for a school of 2,600 students. And so we broke it up into subgroups and showed them how to do democratic process. And I was back here, and one of the schools that we'd helped to start was inviting me to come over to see them. Well, as I'm driving over, I'm saying, my God, I might have to just give them all of the agenda and so on, because the oldest one is 5 years old. And so I got there and I'm walking in and one of the kids is screaming, "Mommy." I'm thinking, oh, I don't know if this is going to work. We're sitting around a table and I said to them, well, so we're going to talk about democratic process. And so you would use a democratic meeting. Arpan, we would use a democratic meeting for one of two main purposes, either to talk about things that would be good for the school or things that are problems in the school. And all the hands went up. And one 4-year-old said she thought that eating chocolate after lunch was not good because it had a caffeine-like substance in it. And so they discussed this and they passed a rule that they shouldn't do that after noontime. And another kid brought up the idea that there were some kids who were sick and still going outside. And so they discussed this and passed a rule that if you're feeling sick, that you can't go out, and so the whole point of this is that the ages don't matter. That's an answer to your question. The concept is to empower students to make decisions about their own education.
No, definitely. That's very, like you named it, right? This is an alternative way. So definitely a very unique concept to be a part of the education system, for sure. Kim, do you have any questions?
Jerry, how does this compare to a Montessori education? It seems similar.
Well, it depends, because Montessori is such a spectrum of schools. It's one of the biggest alternatives. And they are part of our system. They are part of our approach. But some of them are almost indistinguishable from authoritarian programs, and others are very much along the lines of what I've just been talking about. So to answer your question, yes, Montessoris are part of our system.
Gotcha. Okay, because my kids went to Montessori and they were very much in charge of their own education. And they also had, I guess it was like a school council where all the kids would get together and make their own rules. And I would have to agree with you that it works out really well for the kids. It gives them experience with leadership and also problem solving and quite a bit of empathy.
Well, Montessori said, follow the child.
Mm-hmm.
So that, and she meant it. So if people really follow what she said, then they're looking at the radical end of all this.
So Jerry, one more question. So let's say if you are let's say you are in a high school, if you're a high school student, right? Now you're in a school which follow this democratic process and follow all these standards, right? So if you can help me understand with an example, kind of what are the things that students can vote and have control on versus some of the things you just can't give it to student. For example, students to a certain extent, yeah, can be a part of what the curriculum can be, but they cannot be the sole decider what we want to learn, right? Something curriculum wise, it has to be given to them, at least some structure to it at the minimum. So I'm just trying to understand how that actually works.
Well, in my school, we were happy when kids became bored because that meant they came to realize that they had to do something, that we weren't going to entertain them. We weren't going to tell them what to do. So that was fine if they became bored. Okay, so, when I was young, I used to go to my grandfather's house every couple of weeks when I was 6, 7, 8 years old. And what I would do is my grandfather, who was a lawyer and a judge and a writer, an expert on Shakespeare, he was a real Renaissance man. He would sit down with me and he would say, "So, what do you want to learn?" And of course, that seemed a perfectly logical approach to education. And then later on, I discovered, hey, schools don't work that way. And then I realized, okay, it has to move in that direction.
Jerry, to change the subject slightly, I understand from Julie that you run an annual conference. Can you tell us a little bit about those conferences and the kinds of topics that you cover?
Well, I mean, basically, I try to get involved with any of these conferences that are working toward learner-centered education, and it may vary a lot, so this is. I have another staff member who's at one right now, and I'll be going later on, and then we'll be going to this year's conference. Our conference this year is in Minneapolis in June, and there's another one just before that we're going to be involved with too. You see, so the whole idea is to try to network the networkers to some extent, so that everybody kind of can understand what learner-centered education is and how we can all move in that direction to try to change the system away from what has been so entrenched for so long. In many cases, it's necessary to go outside the system. There's only one country I know of that really has enfranchised democratic public schools, and that's Israel. There are about 30 or more public democratic schools in Israel, and everybody in Israel knows what a democratic school is. So in the United States, there are some, but they usually have to fight the establishment, which finds their existence annoying.
Okay. Well, who are the top thinkers besides yourself on these kinds of schools? Like, do you have speakers at your conferences?
Well, we do. Of course, Peter Gray has spoken a lot at our conferences. Peter is an expert on play. And the whole idea of play is very closely related to what we're talking about, because play is crucial to students' learning, because they have to come up with the idea of what it is they're going to do, what the rules are for their play, and and so on. So it's not as simple as fun and games. It's really much more important than that. And okay, well, that's enough for that one.
So another question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So another question is, so Jerry, like yourself or your team or your group, your organization, kind of how many others out there here in United States, kind of means when you go to these conferences, when you network with these networks, kind of how many are out there doing for the same cause?
Well, again, there are a lot of people. There are a lot of conferences. They all vary in their approaches and their themes. There are some of the most important individuals who've been pioneers have died, like Sir Ken Robinson and John Gatto. They were very important, and their books are still being read by people, and they're still very important. It tends to be more on a local basis now, where the schools that have been operating in some cases for a long, long time are the ones that people look at for examples as to what to do. Albany Free School, started by Mary Loya for her kids in the 70s, still in operation. Sudbury Valley School, started by three parents, two of whom are still involved with it since 1968. So that is what people look at a lot. And it's all over the world. It's not just the United States, it's everywhere. Obviously, Summerhill, where A.S. Neal's daughter, Zoe Redhead, is still the director of that school. He started it in 1921.
Wow. That's a long time.
Do you have anyone in the government that is helping you in the government in the US?
In the government of the US, no, not really. The establishment education tends to want to be stuck in the system that they've been in for a long time. It varies from place to place, but for the most part, governments don't help too much. There are government schools or public alternatives that do exist, and some of them are pretty good. There's some here in the United States that managed to survive and have been doing so for a long time. But usually, except in Israel, as I said, there isn't much support for this. Now, there's one thing that's happened lately that's kind of interesting. In some countries, in a lot of states, there now has been a movement to give some of the money that would have gone to the public schools to the parents to use for alternatives. This could be homeschoolers, it could be people from independent alternative schools. That may change the game a little bit. This is happening, for example, in Canada, and also in like the state of New Hampshire, Arizona. There are places around where parents can use money from the state. We just had a meeting. We just sponsored a meeting with one of our staff members in New Hampshire of schools there that are mostly getting along with money that's coming from the state indirectly through parents.
Do you find they have more success persuading schools like at the high school level or the middle school level? Is there an entry that is more receptive?
I wouldn't say that there's any one more than another, because it's all very individual thing. It depends on how enlightened this local superintendent is, or the principal, or whatever, and whoever they are in the United States, they kind of have to fight for it. Again, in Israel, Yaakov Hecht started the Democratic School of Hadera. And that is a public school in Hadera it had over 500 students. It may have 800 now. So it's not a small school. And then there are about, there was the Minister of Education at the time he started that, encouraged other people to start alternatives. And so they did. And so now there are many schools there. And so it's a kind of an interesting model for, say, other countries to look at.
Okay. Awesome. Well, Jerry, we only have a couple minutes left. If people want to learn more about your work or follow you, how do they go about doing that?
They can go to our website, educationrevolution.org, educationrevolution.org. And you could just write to me from there, info@educationrevolution.org. And that would get to me, and we'll help anybody who's looking to start an alternative, change a current school, whatever.
Awesome. Thank you.
That's really great, Jerry. Means, frankly speaking, means I did not have much information about this option even available, kind of. So definitely your presentation was very informative. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, we're doing the best we can, but we need a lot of people to jump on board and work in this direction if we're going to see this kind of change take place in time.
No, absolutely. All right. So I think we are right on time. So Jerry, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. And yeah, it was very informative. Thank you.